Welcome to the Building Web3 Podcast. Today I'm here with my good friend John. He is the founder at Dimitra. Now, before we get too deep into Dimitra, tell us a little bit about your background. What was your come to crypto moment?
So I guess early in my life, I worked in farming. I worked building technology for and implementing technology for supply chains around the world. I also worked doing some cryptography, setting up codes and breaking code and things like that many moons ago. Back in 2016, 17, I was doing some consulting for some big four firms, and they saw on my resume that I had a cryptography background and asked me if I'd go do a crypto project. And to my surprise, it wasn't the crypto that I knew about. And so I spent a lot of time learning about implementing crypto, mainly with Ethereum and some other protocols back at that time. And that was when I joined the movement, and ever since then I've been executing projects typically in the enterprise space, so big corporations and how they use blockchain and crypto in order to implement whatever systems they need to serve their customers.
Mm-hmm. And then, if I'm not mistaken, Dimitra is in the more agricultural space. Talk to us a little bit about like the mission there and what you guys are trying to accomplish.
Yeah, so we work with small farmers around the world, and there's over 600 million small farmers in the world. I was doing a project registering farmers in Africa a number of years ago and built that on a blockchain-based system. And when I was over there, I found that most of the farmers didn't have access to modern technology. They were just starting to adopt cellular phones 6-7 years ago. And even at that point, there were probably only 30% of them had a phone. So villages, they would share their phones, and thought that'd be a great application. Met some different ministers of agriculture, and they asked me if I could, track and trace cattle and deal with track and trace problems that they're having with different crops. So that became what is today Dimitra. At that point, I owned another software company, and we were building systems for a lot of different corporations at that point. Dimitra kind of took off from a demand perspective, and so I incorporated and spun that off as a separate company, and we've been growing by leaps and bounds ever since.
And tell us a little bit about like the underlying like architecture. Tell us about some of the features. I don't know very much personally about the agricultural institution, so I assume my audience doesn't either.
Yeah, so basically our farmers start with a mobile app. They log on, they tell us about themselves, they tell us about their farm and their goals. They give us a geofence. We start immediately with some satellite analysis of their farm and get some photos of what they're growing. We help them with different problems they solve. So we have a number of modules and a number of apps. And so one of our apps is around deforestation. And there's a new law out that any farm that produces coffee or cocoa, soybean, rubber, a whole bunch of different crops in the world, starting January 1st, 2025, they must prove that they have no deforestation on their farm, or they can't ship their products to Europe. So Europe consumes about 50% of the coffee in the world. And so every farmer of millions and millions of farmers need this report. We have built a reporting system within the app. We have a couple million farmers that have signed up for the app, and they're all testing their shipments right now with their customers. And starting January 1st, they need to ship a deforestation report with every shipment. So essentially what happens is they go in, they run a satellite report. Our AI does an analysis of their farm. They mitigate any risks that come out. and then they hit a button, it gets written to the Polygon blockchain and gets distributed to their customer. It's all paid for by Dimitra, and even if they choose to pay with their credit card, we do the conversions for Dimitra. Not everybody has crypto, and not every country accepts crypto, so we do allow fiat payments. They get a 10% discount if they're using our token, though. So that's just one use case. We step off beyond that, and we offer carbon credits to that farmer. So if they want to record their carbon transactions, they can tell us when they plant a tree, they can tell us about cover crop, and we can automatically, using our AI, do calculations to determine if they are carbon neutral or if they're offsetting carbon, and that entitles them to any credit. And if they're entitled to credit at that point, we go through the audit process, get their carbon credits approved, and then there's a sharing arrangement where Dimitra earns some of that carbon credit and for doing the work, and they earn the bulk of the carbon credit for the activities that they're doing on their farm.
And just to double click into the carbon credit example, now what can these farmers do with the carbon credit? Is it they can get some kind of subsidy from the government? It's they can get some kind of better deal. What do they earn through these carbon credits?
Yeah, so they earn Dimitra back, and they could trade that. They could buy other things they need for their farm, fertilizer, trees. We have an RWA program where we subsidize trees for farmers, which again create more carbon, but also create more fruit or crops. Or they could convert it to fiat and buy their groceries.
Yeah, it's probably what I would be doing. Okay. Talk to us a little bit about, I know you guys have expanded into Latin America. Talk to us about the existing geographies you guys mostly work in, and then what are kind of your expansion plans?
Yeah, so we have sales teams in about 70 countries around the world right now, all over Asia, Africa, Latin America, Europe, a little bit in North America and the Caribbean. We have big projects, probably close to 30 projects now, with a couple million farms that we analyze. And, in Latin America, we run projects in Brazil, Bolivia, Colombia, Peru, in Central America, Honduras. We're looking to set up another project in Central America, which will be announced pretty soon. Got a project going in Mexico and one here in the Bahamas. And then in Africa, we've got some East Coast projects in Uganda and Kenya. And on the west side, Nigeria, a few other countries, Egypt, places like that. And then a European arm that really works on the retail end. So with the big coffee roasters and chocolate companies, things like that around the continent. And then we've got guys in Vietnam, Indonesia, India, Nepal. And then we have the project execution team. So between our contractors that work on things and our team, we're over 200 team members now. And then the contractors that we're working is probably a little over 1,000 people.
Wow. So you over 1,000 people working for Dimitra?
Yeah.
Wow. Big company. So talk to us a little bit about, I guess, how you get these clients, because I assume it would be a lot easier to go to, I'm sure this has a negative connotation, but it would be a lot easier to go to like a Monsanto or like a bigger, provider of farms, or like one of the mega farm places. I don't know too much about the industry. I assume it's very difficult to get like each individual farm. Talk to us a little bit about like the business and how you guys get these partnerships.
So we don't sell to individual farmers. We sell to cooperatives. And we sell to corporations. So if you're an individual farmer and you wanted our app, you need to bring your cooperative with you. And so we have cooperatives that range from a couple hundred farms to 50,000 farms. And so a cooperative will sign a deal. They'll make the app available to their farmers. and then we start onboarding. Sometimes the deal comes through a coffee company. We've done some recent deals with Best Coffee and Alcaf and some big coffee traders in Europe, and they have thousands or tens of thousands of farms. They want to clear the coffee for deforestation or carbon or whatever regulation they're looking at, and they'll sign a deal. They'll pay for the reports for the individual farms and then send us the locations of the farms so that we can do the analysis.
Got it. And then this project clearly has a strong focus on RWA tokenization. Talk to us a little bit about, did you have to build out your own platform for, obviously there's the geofencing and the calculating of the carbon credits and the non-deforestation. Talk to us a little bit about the technical aspects that you guys had to create.
Yeah, we have a dev team of about 100 people. So we have been building for 3 years now, and we release new features every month or so. So, we've built fully mobile apps. Everything is on mobile for the farmers. Everything is on web for the corporations. And each feature, we build our own proprietary AI to do all of the analysis. So 100% of what we use today from AI is built within our own team. We continue building. We have a very structured roadmap to build out specific crops that we want to support from an industry perspective, and specific regions. The analysis work isn't the same for every country. Growing coffee in Indonesia looks different than growing coffee in Brazil. And so there's some uniqueness to each of the markets. There is a lot of the base that works, but we use a team of our own agronomists working with NGOs and the cooperative agronomists to customize a lot of the features. And then our dev team goes through, builds out those customizations, tests them, and then we roll it out to the customer and go through kind of a beta testing for the customer specific modules with them before we roll it out to a large group of users.
Got it. And then, we've interviewed a few RWA projects on here, namely in real estate, a few in real estate, one in diamonds, and a few in some other industries. What made you specifically select the agricultural industry?
Yeah, so I don't think we selected the agricultural industry initially for RWA. That was just a byproduct of what we were doing. So, we look at avocado farmers in Kenya, and we started a project with avocado farmers. And so we did a lot of analysis work. We did some track and trace in order to allow them to sell avocados offshore. When you're growing avocados in Kenya, maybe you get 40 cents a kilo in avocado, but you get $1.50 a kilo if they're exporting them to Europe or Asia. So dealing with some of the compliance led us to looking at what else they need. Planting avocados is expensive relative to the income of a farmer. If we're dealing with an onion farmer in Kenya who makes $2,000 a year, for that farmer to convert their farm to avocados might cost them $5,000, $10,000, $20,000. $20,000 in some worlds is not a lot of money, but that's 10 years of income. And so RWA was a perfect fit. Crypto investors could come and buy a tree or a large group of trees and subsidize those and essentially become partners with a farmer. And the farmer will share the revenue coming off of those trees for years to come. So our app, somebody can go into our portal, buy some trees with a specific farmer, get some analysis of the performance of that farmer, and then get the geolocations of the individual trees and get update reports a couple times a year over the next decade, see how the trees are performing. And, at the same time, you're helping a farmer go from $2,000 worth of revenue a year to $40,000 or $50,000 in revenue on the same piece of land. And you can share in that. So there's lots of ways to share, first socially, but mainly, an avocado tree can produce several $100s in revenue per year. And that's in a 10 meter squared area, where in that same space, maybe you would only get $5 or $10 worth of onions.
Wow. Yeah, it's very, very interesting space I haven't thought much about. Talk to us a little bit about some of the challenges. It seems quite complex. You've got farmers all over the world. You've got different products that you're bringing them, and global supply chains, which are not particularly easy either. Talk to us a little bit about some of the challenges you guys have faced in building Dimitra, and like how you guys have overcome them.
Yeah, I think the first thing is that farmers need training. And so how do you train a farmer who doesn't have a lot of technical experience? We look at that and train them in different ways. In Indonesia, we did a big project and partnered with a local university. We trained university students on how to use our app. Those university students were doing research projects, in particular, in this case, in coffee. And they essentially could use the data coming from the farmers for their research, for their degree, and went out and spent a month in the field with 3,300 farmers, teaching them how to use the app while collecting the data for their own research. That's one way we overcome it. Sometimes we train field technicians that need to go out. Hands-on works for a lot of the farmers. If you look, farmers by and large around the world, it tends to be an older audience, typically 40s, 50s, and maybe even older. And a lot of the youth now are joining, but they're more interested in how do they apply technology in farming? How do they, build a small farm and live off the grid? So there's different objectives now than there was in the past for farming. So those people don't tend to need as much training and are much more comfortable with a cell phone or with a laptop and can follow instructions in an app. So training is one big component for us. The other component is, how do you get a project to become sustainable? And a farmer, when they initially make an investment, may not be able to recoup the investment for a couple years. If you're planting avocado trees, you're typically not getting avocados for 3 or 4 years once you plant the tree. So you make that investment up front. So how do we subsidize that? Essentially, we do the RWA. We need to convince the investors in the RWA that you're not going to receive revenue for some period of time. But as the crops come on board, there's more revenue coming out. Another challenge really is around governments. And we work with a lot of governments. We work with the Brazilian government, and they've been great. Governments have slow decision cycles. So when we work on a contract, it may take a year or two to close a contract with a government, going through the government due diligence and some of their concerns related to crypto and technology, and they have to have a competitive environment. Most governments in the world can't just issue a contract to somebody. They have to run an RFP. So those are challenges that take longer. But when we onboard a government, we can get hundreds of thousands of farmers that they're subsidizing. So that's been great for us, but at the same time, a little difficult. And now the last year, with the regulations coming in place around ESG and deforestation, the adoption rate has gone through the roof for us. We have a lot of projects now and a lot of people being pressured by this January 1st deadline. So they're coming on as customers now, and January 1st, they'll start spending on the platform. So that's a big change for us. And as we generate reports into next year, Literally, there should be millions of farms analyzed many times a year.
Yeah, it's very exciting. So talk to us a little bit about like some of the future developments you guys have. I know there's these like pending regulations. You're going to get more people on the platform. Are there any kind of features or milestones y'all are planning for?
Well, we've recently done an ESG platform for the government of Brazil and Agrifrutas. Agrifrutas is an organization in Brazil that works with the farmers who export 80% of the fruit produced in Brazil. Brazil is the third largest fruit exporting nation in the world. And they have made a commitment to ESG as part of their strategy for the next 4 or 5 years. And they've engaged us to build that ESG platform. So they're on Dimitra now. We've started just recently, last month, working with their top 80 to 100 buyers. So the corporations that buy all those oranges, the big juice corporations, the people buying, the cocoa, the big chocolate companies, people like that, to align the ESG initiatives from, and you hear it too much maybe, from fork, to farm or vice versa, farm to fork. So we look at the end-to-end supply chain. We look at where there are ESG related initiatives in there, be it carbon or deforestation or child labor, different local regulations. And we have built out a survey application where those organizations can survey each one of the farmers, gather the data, and then implement audit on some of them with our AI and with some of the tools we have to evaluate compliance activities on the farms or compliance activities in the supply chain. And, Agrifrutas has been a great partner in that. We probably couldn't ask for more in building out our ESG platform to get the third largest exporter in the world to jump on board and license our platform in order to do that, and literally introduce us to each and every one of those major corporations in the world that need to align their own ESG initiatives right back to the farm.
Yeah, it's a very, very exciting time. Talk to us a little bit about how people can get involved with Dimitra and connect with you online.
Yeah, so Dimitra.io is our website. Up on the top of the website, we have a listing of all our social media. We do most of our videos on X now, but we have Telegram and most of the other social media. All those links are up there. We have a number of languages: English, Spanish, Portuguese, Arabic, and Chinese at the moment. And so if you follow those links, you can find those if you speak a different language. And then if you are in the agricultural field or in the food field, on our website, there's a list of all of our leaders. We have 15 regional directors, and their emails are all listed under their photo. So if you're in India, look up our Indian lead, and you can reach out directly to the Indian lead and talk about any potential partnerships or projects. Each one of these guys runs a business underneath the Dimitra umbrella and are interested in looking at how they partner with local corporations in order to improve the livelihood of farmers, to be involved in the food industry, or even, work on local marketing initiatives with local exchanges or other crypto firms.
Amazing. Well, everyone go get involved with Dimitra. Go follow John online, and let's continue building the future of Web3.